Hey guys, so I guess we're gonna cheer for Georgia now. I mean, what was that from Italy? We got to talk a little bit about this. So, Spalletti came out today, the day after, saying that he takes full responsibility for the defeat to Switzerland, but him and his boss, Gravina, head of the Football Federation in Italy, will not resign. Now, for me, those things cannot coexist. You cannot take full responsibility for such a disaster and not resign from your positions. What makes you think that you can do a better job in 2 years' time heading into the World Cup? Because the mistakes that he's done are fundamental. The mistakes from the Italian Football Federation are fundamental. It's been now 14 years since that 2010 World Cup that we got eliminated in the group stages. Since then, it's disaster after disaster after disaster, only with the Euro 2021 blip coming to save us. And Italian football has not found a way to reform itself. To some extent, the youth is not that bad. They're actually quite promising. Finalists of the Under 20 World Cup, European Under 19s, winner of the Under 17 competition. This is a nation that has talent at an under 20 and below level. Just take a look at Camarda in Milan's youth academy. The talent is there. The problem is, how do we translate that talent to top flight football? What is the process to go from a talented 18-year-old player in Italy to then making it into the top Serie A teams? Some nations, such as Spain, such as Germany, such as England, have a better route to success for these players. I mean, just think of the explosion of Yamin Lamal, Cole Palmer, all these guys, or Musiala in Germany. All these guys went through the youth academies straight into some of the top clubs in the nation without having to go and play in third division for 2 years, then in second division, then loaned out to a club like Verona who are trying to get survival. Like, these players, when talent is there, they're brought straight into that first team. And we have players that have won MVP of the tournament award at some of these younger youth competitions, such as Casadei, that were just let go by Inter. Chelsea didn't push that kind of talent because, I mean, why would they, right? He's Italian, he's not English. So they'd rather push English players like Palmer, for example. Why? Because they could sell them at a higher price because of the English tax, so to speak. And so some of these Italian guys that are, in these clubs, in these big clubs in their youth career, then get sent out to lower division, whether that's in Italy or abroad. Like in the case of Casadei, it was abroad. And they have to compete in the second division, which I think is not then a fair reflection of their talent, and they can't express their talent, and it's demotivating. And I'm sorry, but a player in second division playing with guys of second division level is not going to be exploding his talents to the same degree as if he was playing next to world-class players day in, day out with the first team. Other guys like Pafundi, who, 16, 17-year-olds, had an incredible under-20 tournament. He could have really been our Yamin Lamal, let go by Udinese to go play in Switzerland. And who do Udinese bring in? They bring in foreign players that really, I mean, they have ironing things on their feet. They can't even control the ball, and we've seen Udinese cling on to survival by their fingernails. I mean, are you really telling me that those players at Udinese are better than Pafundi that you sent out to Switzerland? Even Calafiori, who was with Roma, was deemed not good enough for Roma, sent out to Switzerland as well for a year, and thank God somehow Bologna recognized that mistake by Roma and brought him back from Switzerland to Italy, and he had the season that he had. But in Switzerland, he was not playing very well, because it's hard to play well when you're surrounded by players that are just not good enough. So these Italian youth players that we have, we cannot just keep sending them out to Serie B, Serie C, or second division or first division abroad in lower leagues. We have to bring them to the Serie A in the top 10 clubs, let them grow there, give them a chance, because, guys, it's the only way. It's what other nations are doing. There has to be a clear path for them, and there has to be incentives for the clubs to do that. The federation has to step in. They have to be much more strict on letting go of these players. There has to be, for example, a rule that says you need X many under 23 players in your squad that are Italian, and they cannot be sent out on loan, and they have to make a minimum number of appearances in the league. There just has to be. They have to get given the spotlight and the chance to train with the first team, with quality players. The federation has not been able to address this, and it's resulted in us having, yes, quality at an under 20 level and then nothing going forward, unlike other nations. Speaking about the federation, guys, I mean, there are examples in Italy of things working, with, for example, tennis and athletics doing extremely well as a sport in Italy. And I want to say that because a lot of people are saying, oh, nowadays the youth, they just don't train as much as before, or everybody's now on their PlayStation, or everybody's on their computers. That's not true. There are very talented athletes in Italy. The swimmers, they're doing incredibly well. The sprinters, they're doing incredibly well. The long jumpers, the high jumpers, as we said, the tennis players, they're all doing incredibly well. So the raw talent in Italy is there. Those sports are managed better than football, where football now, you wonder whether the clubs care at all about the national team, and in reality they don't. They don't try to prioritize Italian players. They don't care about the Italian youth. It's very sad. It's very sad because back in the day, I think clubs had a bit more motivation to growing Italian talent, and they were proud of their Italian players. And nowadays, I mean, we're just even in the case of Napoli, we brought in Nathan from Brazil for 5 million. Are you telling me that for 5 million you couldn't buy an under 23 Italian from Serie B and hoping for the best? I mean, it's the same level as the Brazilian league. You might as well grow an Italian talent. So it makes no sense, some of the things that Italian clubs are doing, and I really hope that in the case of Napoli at least, that guys like Gaetano and Foloruncio get given minutes this year under Conte, because I think the club also can benefit from it, not just the national team, but I think a club with an identity of Italian players that understand the dynamics of the league, the rivalry between teams. I think they can perform better than maybe a foreign player of the same talent. Obviously, we do need foreign players. We do need guys like Kvara, like Osimhen. These guys bring more to the team. These are talents that we just don't have in Italy. I'm not saying to get rid of them. I'm not saying to limit them drastically, but it can't also be that we have one Italian player in a team of 11. That's too little. So, okay, that's the structural problems that we have in Italy. And by the way, I think it could be very cool if we set up like a TV channel where you can watch for free the Primavera or Serie C games, because I think clubs need to have access to this, and people should have access to this, and we should be hyping up these 17, 18-year-olds that are out there. And if we just had more visibility on them, it could be a way. it could be a way to get them more involved with the first team. Right, that's the structural problems of Italy. Now let's get to Spalletti and this Euro competition, guys. So Spalletti, he's very confused with what he wanted to do. He started off his journey with Italy 4-3-3. Let's bring Napoli ball of 2 years ago to this national team, and he had a group of players that he was counting on. This group of players, for example, included the likes of Raspadori as your number 9. Then, as things progressed, we went from 4 at the back to 3 at the back to then 4 at the back to then 3 at the back to 4 at the back to 3 at the back. We came to the Euros not knowing if we were going to play 3 at the back or 4 at the back. We were the only country in the entire Euros that didn't know if they were going to play a back 3 or a back 4. And we kept changing that throughout the tournament. As for our number 9s, we started off with Raspadori in the qualifiers. We then moved to Retegui in most of the friendlies. We then tried Scamacca in the final friendly before the Euros. We insisted on Scamacca. We then changed him for Retegui against Croatia. I thought Retegui played a better game than Scamacca did in the previous 2 games. And then we come to play against Switzerland and we're back to Scamacca. And throughout the entire tournament, Scamacca's been at the center of pressure and media attention because Spalletti kept criticizing him and his positioning in his press conferences, saying that he needs to cover the field better, he needs to read the opponent's passages of play better, he needs to find himself more ready. And obviously we all know PlayStation Gate, where you're telling a grown man whether or not he can play games or not late at night. I mean, look, Spalletti, this guy has scored 15 goals this season or more, and I'm pretty sure nobody was telling him whether he could play or not PlayStation late at night. Like, let the man do what the man does. You know, like, you need to build cohesion within the team. You need to make these players feel comfortable because, like it or not, they have to be there for a month. And if you're going to start being a dictator, that's not going to work. These are not children. Speaking about his choices and selection and team building, you cannot keep playing Di Lorenzo because everybody knows the poor season that Di Lorenzo has had. The players know it, the fans know it. You putting Di Lorenzo on the field because, quote, he's like a son to me, what message is that giving the other players in the dressing room? It's giving a message that you have favorites, that there is no meritocracy in this team. How does that make them feel? How does a guy who's on the fringes of the squad, how is he going to feel knowing that if he's not the teacher's pet, he's never going to get in? And this is already on the back of some questionable selections, such as Fagioli, who had played 10 minutes this season and then is brought onto the national team. And look, I don't have anything against Fagioli being on a national team because I think that he made a mistake, which was something that just involved him. He didn't do match fixing. He didn't hurt anybody. He just hurt himself. Okay, it's very similar to the case of, let's say, Maradona, where his drug use only hurt himself. He wasn't hurting anybody else. It didn't affect any football game. It was just him and himself. I think those people, if they've realized their mistakes, if they've paid the penalty of sitting on the sidelines, then they should be allowed a second chance. Because, again, they didn't hurt anybody except themselves. But one thing is saying, okay, Fagioli, I'll consider you for a tournament in 2 years' time, because at that point you would have had 2 seasons under your belt. And one thing is to say, your disqualification has just finished. You played 10 minutes. Off you go to the Euros. Why? What did he show for the entire season to deserve this specific convocation into the Italian national team? I don't have a problem with Fagioli as a person. I have a problem with him representing us in this tournament. In the next one, fine. Represent us. I don't care. But in this tournament, he did not do enough to be represented, to represent Italy. Other guys like Mancini, like Cristante, I mean, Di Lorenzo, they're off the back of horrible seasons. Why are they playing? There are guys that have had amazing seasons. I'm thinking Buongiorno, who has been by far the best defender in Italy this season. Your eyes and the stats will tell you that. Didn't get a minute on the field. And okay, we didn't lose because of our defense. We lost because of our midfield, but that same reasoning translates into the other areas of the field. And maybe we did lose a little bit with our defense with Di Lorenzo. Maybe Bellanova from Torino could have been the better option there. He also has a bit more familiarity with some of the Inter players on the field since he was ex-Inter. And he's someone that actually has the legs to give us the intensity that Di Lorenzo did not have. So there's a lot of questionable choices there. He also brought in a ton of center backs, as we talked about, that he didn't bring. Gatti, Buongiorno, so many center backs, when what we really needed was more creativity up top. We needed someone that could play in between the lines, that wanted to receive the ball from the midfielders, because guess what? There was no one to receive the ball from the midfielders. We kept playing it wide to the wingers. But you cannot keep doing that on a consistent basis. Some games require you to play direct in between the lines. Someone that knows how to turn, face the goal, and shoot. And I'm thinking, why did we not bring Baldanzi? Why did Spalletti never try Baldanzi? He could have been that creative player, that wild card that you can put in that makes things tick differently. Also, left-footed. Speaking of left-footers, you, Spalletti, have so many wingers in this team as well, but they're all right-footed. And you're putting Chiesa on the right to what? Cut inside on his left, and then what? He's going to have to shoot and cross with his left foot. At that point, I'd rather have Orsolini or Politano's left foot instead of Chiesa's left foot. Chiesa's a great player. I love Chiesa because he's actually one of the few that knows how to beat a man. And he showed it in the Euros. He might not be super good finishing wise, but at least he can beat a man. He can make things happen. And the few things that he's done in this specific Euros, even against Switzerland, was those few minutes that he was on the left. But Spalletti insisted on playing him on the right. And at that point, you might as well bring Orsolini, who, by the way, had a better season in Bologna than all those Switzerland players who play for Bologna combined. So we do have enough quality within Italy. But if you don't choose the right players, this is what you're going to get. And you have to pick players that are on the back of a good season, even if their overall quality might not be so high. Guys like Orsolini, man, he is experiencing the season of his life. His motivation and happiness is through the roof. And what do? You leave him home. For instead, guys like, I don't know, Di Lorenzo, yes, it's a different position, but as an example, guys like Di Lorenzo, that their confidence is at the floor. When you select players for a 7-game tournament, you have to rely on things like motivation, on things like fitness. It's not about choosing the most skillful player or the one that you have the best relationship with, because you're not supposed to be with him for the next 12 months. You're supposed to just win 7 games. And what makes you win 7 games? I would rather have a motivated player that is technically worse than a great technical player, a great man, but his motivation is on the floor. Because when your motivation is on the floor, you can't express any of that technique. And we knew that Di Lorenzo was not going to turn things around in 7 matches, because his problems are much deeper than just something that can be turned around very quickly. Especially because there was all that transfer talk surrounding Di Lorenzo. So it wasn't just his form, it was also everything that was going on in the background. Anyways, guys, this is my thoughts on this Italy team. It's a shame because I think we could have, with the players that we have in Italy, at least beat Switzerland. But there was no team spirit, there was no group, there was no clear tactical plan, and this is the result. I don't think we would have gotten further than that. I think the quarters was always going to be our limit, even if we had the best coach out there. But it hurts to have seen 4 games being played this bad. It's the way in which we crash out of these Euros that really hurts. And man, I'm just grateful now that we don't have to keep watching more of this Italy side, and I'm excited to move on and we can start focusing on Napoli. You know, today, the 30th of June, officially marks the end of the 23-24 season, with goodbyes to guys like Zielinski and all that. From tomorrow, it's officially the 24-25 season. And I hope that we see some better football, some motivated players, because, guys, it's impossible to keep going on like this. And on that final note, on the motivation of these players, it's not possible that you enter the field and within 20 seconds you concede a goal against Albania. And within 20 seconds of the second half, you concede a goal against Switzerland. What is going on in these players' minds? What has Spalletti been telling them in the dressing room? And why can't these players be self-motivated? Why are we seeing players with the Italian national team, with Napoli and all that, why are we seeing these players not able to motivate themselves? I think it comes down to these players knew that they were not going to be good enough to win the Euros, and so they thought, you know what, like, what's a semi-final to me? I'd rather crash out now and go to Ibiza and meet my wife or my girlfriend or whatever, and be on the beach, than, you know, play an extra 2 games for what? Just to crash out in the semis? No, I'd rather be in Ibiza. That's what these players were thinking of. And that's the problem that kind of these big nations have. Because whilst a quarterfinal is an incredible result for Switzerland, and they are now heroes back in Switzerland, for us it's either you win the tournament or nothing. And it's the same with Napoli. It's either you get top 2 or nothing. And so when it becomes very clear that you're not going to be able to reach that goal because you know your limits, then you just don't even try. And so you end up playing bad, you don't create a team spirit, and none of the ingredients come together. And you crash out, or you finish in the table even lower than you would have normally. So, guys, that's my hypothesis. Guys, that's my video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And excited for this new season. And as we said, thankfully this 23-24 campaign is officially over today. Ciao, ragazzi.